Hello and welcome to another Thursday night Q&A. Very pleased tonight to say that I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues, Craig Cunningham and Keith Moss. Craig's from our technical support team. Good evening, Craig. How are you?
Hi, Sam. Very, very well. Yourself?
Yeah, good so far. And Keith Moss, one of the area engineers from our assessment team. How are you, Keith, and how's your day been?
I'm very well as well, Sam. Yeah, it's been very good. Had a nice company today, done a nice little scope of work. So, yeah, it was very good, very successful. Good.
Okay, well, before we start off with our question of the week, we just want to run through a few house rules. While we're going through some questions that we didn't get round to answering last time, please put your questions into the chat. And we'll try and answer as many of those as we can, remembering no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers. And please, while you're in the chat with each other, be respectful to each other, because the whole thing about tonight is trying to help each other to learn about everything BS 7671 and this great world of electrical installations. Nobody knows it all, so I'm sure we'll learn something off somebody as well tonight, as we do each and every day. So I just need to run through a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, our team will give out advice on the question asked, but our guidance and advice is limited to the extent of information in the question. We can't assume any liability to anyone for any loss or damage caused by an error or a omission in any of the advice or guidance that we give, and that is whether the error or omission is the result of negligence or anything else. If we do make any reference to legislation, it can't be considered as legal advice. Most importantly, individuals must rely on their own skill and judgment when making use of any of the guidance offered. So please do put your questions into the chat, and once we've got through some of the ones that we're already in, we'll get round to answering as many of those live ones tonight as we possibly can. First up, we'll look at the question of the week that we posted out on Monday. Little bit of an Amendment 4 one, if I'm honest. So the question was, if equipment is selected for which there's no applicable standard, so perhaps it might be a new development, something that's been recently produced, so there's no applicable standard yet because the standards haven't caught up with the technology. So if there is no applicable standard, it should be agreed between the person specifying the installation and who? The customer, B, the installer, C, the designer, or D, the duty holder. So if we've got equipment that's selected where there's no applicable standard for the equipment, it should be agreed between the person specifying the installation and what's our answer there, Keith?
It's the designer, Sam. Amendment 4 has changed from Amendment 2. In Amendment 4, Regulation 133.1.2, it now states where there is no applicable standards for the item of equipment concerned, it shall be selected with special agreement specifying the installation and the designer. When in Amendment 2 it was the installer. So it has changed. It's a subtle change from the installer to the designer.
Yeah, like you say, just a small change, but it does make a difference. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about on those jobs, those large jobs, it's very commonplace to have one organisation involved in the design and a different organisation involved in the install, and then it can be even more important because it'll be the designer that should be considering the impact of that equipment on the rest of the installation and not necessarily the installer.
And lots of our contractors, they will be at least two of them parts as well. They'd be the installer and the designer, and they might even be the specifier as well on lots of jobs, small and medium, I would suggest. But yeah, so it just needs to be written down as a departure and specified as specified in Part 6 of PS 7671.
Yeah. Okay. One of the questions that we didn't get round to last time, if an existing lighting circuit is protected by a circuit breaker, and that circuit is extended to supply a mains powered smoke alarm in a domestic property, does the circuit now require a 30 milliamp RCD to be installed? So we've got an existing lighting installation in a domestic property. Somebody's looking to extend the lighting circuit to supply a mains powered smoke alarm, and the question they're asking, do they have to put a 30 milliamp RCD on that circuit? What's our thoughts there, Craig?
Well, the simple answer is no. And the regulation that we'd normally look at in this is for domestic lighting circuit 411.3.4. But because we're extending a lighting circuit, but it's a smoke detector, so it's under a different British standard. It's not a light fitting. It doesn't necessarily have to follow that requirement. There may be other reasons why an RCD could be required. It could be how the cables ran installed, less than 50 mil under a surface, in a wall, above a ceiling. But the main answer is no. It's not a requirement to RCD protect it.
Yeah, spot on, because that requirement's for the circuit, and the addition isn't going to affect the existing circuit in terms of safety requirements. Question 2 from our hangover pot. Again, another one associated with additions and alterations to an existing installation. So when adding additional sockets to an extension that's been built to an existing electrical installation, can the new socket outlets be installed at a height of same height as those already in the property, or do I have to follow the requirements of approved document M and install them at 450 from the finished floor? So this one's about the fact that obviously the original install may have been done before approved document M, part M of the building regs for accessibility, and so we know that generally raised the heights of sockets in domestic properties. So the engineers asked, if he's got an extension now to an existing property, does he have to install the sockets in the extension at that new height in accordance with Part M? But what's our thoughts there, Keith?
It's another no answer, Sam, really. You don't have to, on a new build, you would have to do them between 450 and 1200 in any of the habitable rooms, but it doesn't have to on an extension unless it's going to be specified by that extension might be for something completely specific for a disability. Otherwise, no, you can go back in at the same height, no worse so. Yeah, I think the only thing that we tell people about is that obviously if the first ones were incorrect, because for example they were too low, then obviously not follow those. But so long as they're at an appropriate height, that they're not contravening any other regulations by putting stress and strain on the cable and its connections. But yeah, and I think that's really sort of the building regs taking a sensible approach, in that they wouldn't expect people to have a single property with two different requirements. And also to talk to your customers on that one, Sam, as well, because they might decide that they would prefer them higher because that room's going to be used for specific reasons, or they just want to make life easier for themselves in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be done. Yeah, if they want to, and like you say, there may be some good reasons for doing it. But yeah, I just wanted to flash, I don't think we put on the screen that there is a part of the building regulations itself that says the requirements don't apply to an extension of or a material alteration of the dwelling. So it's the building reg itself that says we don't have to do it. Okay. Another one that was held over in the pot is the removal of redundant circuits and cabling in domestic properties certifiable? So do we need to create some form of certificate when I've removed some cabling, or even is it notifiable to the local authority building control under Part P? So when we're removing circuits and redundant cabling in domestic properties, do we need to certify it or notify it? And I think Craig's got us an answer on that one. What's our thoughts there, Craig?
I think we're going for a full house on this one, Sam. It's another no. Removal of cables is not notifiable under Part P. We wouldn't use an electrical installation certificate. The things that you do need to consider is obviously you need to be suitably competent, aware of the hazards, things like that. What you should do is also speak to your client regarding how you're going to achieve it. Document it in some way. Now that could be an email, it could be a job sheet, it could be other ways of documenting it, but you definitely want to be able to document that, but discuss that with your client.
Yeah, spot on. Another addition and alteration one really, or a change. So should I use a minor work certificate when replacing a circuit breaker with an RCBO? Keith, what's our thoughts there? If we're changing the protective device, do I need to certify that?
Yes, you do, Sam. Yeah, we're changing the characteristics of the circuit considerably. So it would be classified as an alteration to the circuit's characteristics, so it should be certified on the minor work certificate. And then whatever testing is going to be required. So if it's an RCBO, test the RCBO, make sure it conforms with the requirements of BS 7671.
Yeah. We've had a comment in to say that people aren't hearing Craig and Keith, but they're only hearing me. So if that is the case, can you others confirm that for us, and we'll try and resolve that and see where that technical issue's arising. So yeah, please do. We'll move on for now. On a domestic condition report, what classification code should be given to meter tails which are over 3 meters in length? So again, it's a common question we get. People are aware of that 3 meter rule where we're allowed to use the service fuse or cutout fuse for protection and fault protection and overload of our tails, but there is a 3 meter threshold. So if an installation's gone over 3 meters, what guidance would we give on a condition report on that?
There may not necessarily be a code attributed to it at all based on the 3 meter length, although the DNO don't like us to use it for greater than 3 meters for overload and short circuit protection. There may not necessarily be an issue. So if your ZS value is appropriate to the fuse that's connected at the DNO's head, then electrically it's not unsafe. There may be other instances, the tails may not be adequately protected. They may not be they may not use fire-rated clips or appropriate containment, etc. So it could be codable in other instances, but it wouldn't necessarily be codable just for that reason.
Yeah. And if we look at some of the reasons why we might code it, so not just the 3 meters, but as you said, Craig, look at the condition of the tails themselves. Are they damaged? Does it need support to prevent premature collapse? Are the tails adequately supported so that there's no stress on the conductors or their connections? And then have we got, based on the size of the fuse and the size of the conductors, have we got adequate overload protection? So yeah, there may be other reasons, but purely for the 3 meters, although it is one of the conditions or requirements in 7671, going beyond 3 meters in isolation doesn't make the installation unsafe. It may make it non-compliant, but it doesn't necessarily make it unsafe. We are looking at the technical issues. We are getting some messages saying that people on LinkedIn are hearing us okay, so it may be the different platforms. So I can see from the audience we've got some colleagues on Facebook, some colleagues on YouTube. So yeah, it would be interesting if there is anybody on Facebook also, could they let us know whether they can hear us properly or not. We'll go to another question. Regulation 443.4.1 about SPDs, and it's got a couple of idents when we need to install SPDs. One of them is around loss. So ident 3 says, the question is, what does the NIC constitute as a significant financial loss? Would this include consequential losses? So it is a good question, because the regulation talks about needing to provide protection against loss. So what's our thoughts there, Keith?
Well, there's no real fixed value, Sam, for what financial loss is constituted at. Really, that's to be decided by the owner of the installation. Tell them what the losses can be, I think, is probably the best thing, and let them decide at what point their financial loss would be so significant, and compared to the cost of an SPD, it would not be worth fitting an SPD, or it would be. It's always about legal and contractual things that you might have with your customer who you're working with, but there isn't a value that is fixed down, especially by the NIC anyway.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that, that there's no value in 7671. NICEIC don't have a defined value, and one of the things to say is that what we might consider to be something valuable, the customer, homeowner, responsible person for the installation might not put the same value on it. So it is very important that we do involve them and ask them, and I think it's the only way. That there's never going to be a hard fixed value of that's going to be appropriate for that regulation. It is down to what the customer considers to be that value.
That assessment, Sam, I normally get I advise the contractors to talk to that customer and get them to make a decision whether the SPD is going to be admitted or not, and try to get it in writing that what you have put down to say that your recommendations, and they don't want it because of financial reasons.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, no, go.
It's a common question that does come up a lot on the helpline, and you've already touched upon it. It's something I'll go through with someone, and I'll say, what's considered a substantial financial loss for me may not be the same as it is for someone else. So, for example, if they're a multi-millionaire, their Tesla charger and battery system wouldn't be a substantial, or may not be a substantial financial loss for them, but it would for me if I could afford a Tesla. So it is something that's, you can't fix it.
Yeah, very, very true. What we think is expensive may not be to the customer, and vice versa. If it's because we don't know that that's an heirloom and whatever. So yeah, it's really more important to think of their consideration of value. Okay, we've got a couple of questions that have already come in, so we'll take a break there from the pool and perhaps come back to them. So the first one actually came in across social media after we posted out the original question, so I just want to bring that one up first. So here we go. On an EICR, an air source heat pump is installed on a TT earthing system. It's supplied via incorrect RCD for heat pump as per the manufacturer's instructions. And the engineer that's asked the question has actually followed on with, concern would be the potential for loss of fault protection should the RCD be blinded, and the question would be around appropriate coding for the incorrect device in this instance. They've added, thanks a lot, appreciated, good work. I think they've kind of got to the same conclusion as we would do as well. So what's thoughts there, and anybody on so it's a TT and they are talking about fault protection, and there's an RCD which isn't as to manufacturer's instructions.
Yeah, I'll go with that, Sam. Because they're looking at fault protection as the protective measure, then I think we would always code it a C2 in that instance, because it's a TT system. If it were a TN and we were only looking at additional protection, then a less stringent code could be applied.
Yeah, spot on. I agree with that. Would you add anything to that, Keith?
No, not really, Sam. I think it is all about the fault protection, that it's mandatory on a TT system to have fault protection provided by an RCD soon to be selected. The fact that the air source heat pump might require an F-type or a B-type, it isn't really the factor. The factor is that it's got to have fault protection, and it would obviously be much better if it was selected in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions as well.
Yeah. One of the first one that's come in this evening. If installing additional socket outlets within 3-compartment trunking installed on a perimeter wall within a commercial office, but the existing circuit wiring doesn't have fire retainers, should we then install these to bring the circuit up to standard by installing the fire retaining clips to the entire trunking system? The cable are single insulet cables. Hope this makes sense. So yeah, I think we're picking it up that those are existing cables, and it's become noticed because you've obviously opened up the trunking to install your new part. My thoughts there would be, you need to produce an installation certificate for your work, and on that installation certificate there will be a box which says condition of the existing installation. I would suggest you should at least raise that issue there, but you could still complete your work and complete your certificate, because that's an issue that already exists. It would be great to do that, to install the clips to make sure that we have got protection against premature collapse, but it wouldn't be a requirement for you to be able to complete your work and certify your work. I would also suggest to be very specific when it comes to defining the scope of work that you've done, to make it very clear that those unsupported cables were already there, and then also to make it clear that you have provided the appropriate support for your cables as needed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it would be great practice to do it. Do you have to do it to the existing ones? No, but we would strongly recommend that you at least bring that to the attention of the person you're doing the work for. And maybe if it's the case that you notice it as you go and it would be more efficient, then ask them if they'll give you the work to do it. But it's one of those ones, and explain to them that it would get picked up at the next periodic inspection anyway. Either of you guys add anything to that? Have I rambled on and given an answer, or just rambled on?
Rambled on and gave an answer, I believe.
Yeah, I think you've got to consider the other compartments as well. So it's not only about the power circuit at this point, Sam. So were there data cables running? Were telephone cables running at the same point? Who was responsible for those?
Yeah, I think that's what he's trying to say. I think that it's cables that were there already, single insulated cables, and they're not being supported. But the existing wiring doesn't have fire retainers. Should we then install these, i.e. the fire retainers, to bring the circuit up to standard by installing the fire retaining? So, I get the impression that the issues there already. It's not something they've introduced, but they've noticed, and it doesn't directly affect the safety of their work. But they're just asking, should they do it? And I guess what I'm trying to say is, it would be good to do it. It's not a requirement to do it in order for you to complete and certificate your work. But yeah, bring it to the attention of the person.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, another one is what code should be given if you've got 4 2.5mm cables in one MCB? 2 are for the ring main, 2 cables are for radials feeding one socket each. So yeah, quite a common one in that if we add one, we could consider it a spur from the point of the ring, which is acceptable without any additional protective device. But where we've got 2, strictly speaking, non-compliant with 7671, but code. Any thoughts there? We'd really need a little bit more information as to is it a fixed item that's plugged into that socket? Is it likely to overload? What's our thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll go. I think we could look at manufacturer's instructions for it as well. How many conductors maximum size within the MCB permitted? That's another thing to consider. You're right, with the load connected, could it overload at that point? How many sockets are connected to it?
Would it be possibly be able to be tightened up correctly as well with that many conductors in there? I mean, it's fine insulation if you manage to squeeze 4 in there, really, isn't it?
4 2.5mm, yeah. No, you both make that same great point that I omitted. That the manufacturers of that MCB will have a design of how many conductors, and they might find that it's not built for that. So then again, you'd be contravening manufacturer's instructions, and possibly then resulting in a situation where you can't confirm the tightness and therefore the correct connection of that. A little bit more information, I think, so about before we'd be able to give a definitive code. But yeah, certainly I think something that wants a little bit of thought, and very dependent upon if you've got a fixed device in that socket that you know the load about, or if it's an open socket for general use, then that would sort of raise more concerns because you're not then in control of it. Another question that's come in tonight, higher ZS than maximum allowed, but it's on an RCBO protected circuit. The engineer has said that, this is their words, due to bad circuit design on an EICR, as it's TN with a good ZE, but the circuit is too long. No code or code 3. So one of those instances where we're saying we can't meet the ZS of the overcurrent protective side, but because it's got an RCD element in the RCBO, we're able to meet the maximum ZS of the, which means it's then too long. So we have got adequate fault protection through the use of the RCD. But it would be worth investigating. Is it really too long? Can you confirm that? Or is that ZS gone high because we've got damage to the cables in that conductor? So I'm just thinking, Was it? I know the engineer has put in his question it was bad circuit design, but was it really bad circuit design, or has it got worse now because there's some damage to that cable which is causing extra resistance? Any thoughts on that one? So let me read it again and then I'll stop talking. Higher ZS than maximum allowed, but on an RCBO protected circuit due to bad circuit design on an EICR, as it's TN with a good ZE, but the circuit is too long. No code or C3?
I'll go on that one if you like, Sam. The 30 milliamp RCD should operate up to 1667 ohms safely, but it would be a very, very long circuit if you've done it, say, I don't know, but let's for example call it a 20 amp circuit on a 2.5 radial. It's a very, very long piece of cable. My thoughts would be exactly the same as yours. Have we got a dodgy socket or a dodgy connection in the socket that's giving a high resistance, therefore it's going to be producing more heat? In that case, I think I would be thinking about coding it either way, a C3.
Yeah.
I think sorry, Sam. I think we definitely have to determine what the issue is. Firstly, if there is no issue, like the engineer said, and it is just too long, so it's perfectly sound, it's just too long, then we can use the max ZS of the 30 milliamp, the 1667 value, but it has to be proven that it is sound.
Yeah.
Or we can do that.
Yeah, and that's it, because quite often when we come to do an EICR, we don't know exactly the installation and how things have been run, and we get an R1, R2 measurement and we can estimate the length of the circuit, but without knowing exactly how it's been run, it's difficult to confirm that length is correct. But yeah, I think that's key, in that ultimately, if it is too long a circuit, using an RCD is an acceptable method, because that gives us a greater ZS to achieve.
I'd be considering, if it's that long as well, Sam, if it really is a really long circuit and we know what the load is going to be, and I'd be making sure I was going to verify the volt drop as well. Yeah,
it's a good point that we'd probably run into volt drop problems before we run into ZS problems normally. So yeah, that would be another good thing to do, is to see, especially if, so if it's a long circuit, hasn't mentioned cable sizes, but if it's a long circuit with small cable sizes, then volt drop really can become an issue. And then depending upon what we're supplying, it might not operate at all, or it might not operate safely. Another good question: if a new substation has been built near an existing property and now the protective devices are lower than the PFC, would this be a C2 on an EICR? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you've said it's an existing property, but you haven't specified domestic, but I'm thinking domestic. If it's domestic and we've got a 16 kA rated consumer unit, then we're fine. But so we might still only be using domestic 6 kA breakers within that assembly, but the assembly manufacturer has tested it and proved that it's suitable for operation up to 16 kA. So that would be my first thought, although they have said an existing property, it might not be domestic. But again, we can use the rating of the consumer unit as an assembly, which is one of the reasons why we don't put other people's equipment inside that assembly, because we want to be able to use the manufacturer's rating, and it's one of the reasons now in domestic that we 7671 advises there's no need to test if we can confirm that the maximum prospective fault currents are less than 16 kA. There's no need to do the live tests associated with that. Again, would we add anything to that, people?
No, you've covered that. Domestically, you've covered it. Commercially, or if it's something else, there's backup protection that could be applied. But yeah, I think you've covered that off, sir.
Yeah.
That question.
Yeah. All plastic consumer units considered compliant if installed in a front porch meter cupboard. So plastic consumer units, that we're aware that there are still plenty of them out there, providing they're still fit for purpose, so they provide the right degree of enclosure and barrier protection. Then we consider our recommendation is it would only be a C3 if they were in an escape route or in a close proximity to combustible material, for example, underneath a wooden staircase. But other than that, and if this one is installed outside in the meter cabinet, providing that cupboard provides adequate protection for the environment, yeah, I would suggest that it'd be compliant. But yeah, you would need to make sure that the enclosure that the consumer unit in is appropriate for the environment. If it is, you said in a front porch. Oh, so if it's, I'm reading it again now, in a front porch tells me that it's actually inside the building. It's inside the porch. So yeah.
Are they suggesting an escape route at that point then, Sam?
Possibly, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so our plastic, I'm going to read it again. Our plastic consumer units considered compliant if installed in a front porch meter cupboard. So yeah, unless the cupboard is made of non-combustible material, then yeah, the consideration around that, as Craig rightly says, would be of that being a hazard in a potential escape route, in which case then we would suggest it's a C3 that could be improved again. Okay, they're coming in thick and fast now, which is really good. So if a 40 amp overcurrent protective device is installed and is derated to 32 amp due to factors, and is supplying a fixed load of 32 amp, does the current carrying capacity of the circuit cable need to be capable of carrying 40 or 32 amp? So let me read that one again. If a 40 amp overcurrent protective device is installed and derated to 32 amps due to factors, I'm not really understanding that. I can understand that the current carrying capacity of cable might be derated because, for example, we're putting it in insulation, but not sure what would result in the derating of the overcurrent protective device. But anyway, does the current carrying capacity of the circuit cable need to be capable of carrying 40 amps or 32 amps? Well, our IZ has to be equal to or greater than the nominal rating of the protective device. So if it is a 40 amp protective device, I would suggest the current carrying capacity of the cable has to be 40 amps or more. I'm not really, unless you guys can think of a reason why an overcurrent protective device would be derated.
No, I can't see that. I think they're possibly talking about the cable, as you're suggesting, Sam. Are they saying that it's a 40 amp MCB or RCBO, for example? The cable has been derated because it's covered in insulation to 32 amps, but the load is only 32 amps. Is it an EICR question?
No, they've just said,
okay.
Does the current capacity of the cable need to be capable of carrying 40 amps or 32 amps? Yeah, so like you say, if we give you an example, if
shower circuit is ideal.
Yeah, yeah. So the current carrying capacity of the cable has to match the nominal rating of the protective device, because obviously that's how much will be let through to the circuit. So the current carrying capacity of the cable has to be equal to or greater than the rating of the protective device.
And the new protective device is going to be 30 or 32. So the cable needs to be capable of carrying 32 amps, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Which it probably will be, because if it was designed to carry 40 in the first place, you'd imagine that even if it's been derated through insulation reasons or grouping reasons or any other of the grouping factor reasons now to 32, you'd imagine it would still be suitable.
Yeah.
I possibly think that it could have been an EICR question, and if it was a 40 amp MCB, but the fixed load was only 32 amps and the cable was suitable to carry 32 amps, would it be a codable question? That's a different take on it. I don't know if they're aiming at that.
Yeah, possibly. And then in which case, that if it's a fixed load, then that gives us different rules about the overcurrent protective device. Yeah, so if we know that the cable can't be overloaded due to the load, then we can actually admit overcurrent protection. That's permissible. So yeah, there's some potential in that there.
We still have to make sure that we can achieve short circuit protection.
Yeah, earth fault and short circuit. The person with the new substation, I'm just checking, is it they that have come back with a bit more information? Yeah, it's a domestic property with type B 6KA MCBs. So yeah, as we said, so long as the consumer unit is rated at 16KA, which I think most, if not all, domestic consumer units are, then that's okay to have 6KA rated, even if you might be measuring a prospective fault current greater than 6KA. It's the upfront devices before that will take that, and the assembly itself is rated at 16KA. The engineer that put that last question in has said the overcurrent protective device is derated due continuously fully loaded devices installed next to each other. Right, okay. So they're saying because of the arrangement in the consumer unit, they're having to derate. Then yeah, if that's the case, then they're having to derate that. Then the cable can also be the cable's current carrying capacity can also be dropped to that lower rating. So got a fixed piece of equipment that's connected via a 63 amp triple pole and neutral socket. Does this require an RCD? It is in a lab situation. So because of its 63 amp rating, let me just confirm that, unless you guys can say it off the top of your head. But
it's up to 63 amps, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I'm just going to so then so I'm looking at, I don't know if you guys got your book in front of you. Am I in the right place on page 72? Additional requirements for socket outlets.
Are you in the orange book, Sam?
Yeah, in the orange book.
Are you looking at 411.3.2.2? Or you look? No, you're looking.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was looking at mobile equipment.
That's disconnection times. Yeah.
Yeah, so 63 amp with one or more socket outlet. So the question was, does this require an RCD? Yes, so I'm looking now at 411.3.3 additional requirements for socket outlets, and it's socket outlets with a rated current not exceeding 32
not exceeding,
amps.
Yeah, above it.
So
I don't think it's required, depending on what the socket outlet's feeding.
Yeah. So on the basis that it's 63 amp, it wouldn't need it. It says it's in a lab situation. I don't think that changes anything. Unless
there's a local authority requirement for it, or specialist equipment requirement for it, or it's on a TT system.
On a TT system, or it's being used to supply equipment outside. Oh no, that again is limited at 32 amp, isn't it? So ignore that last bit. So it hasn't said that it's not TT. Of course, if it's TT, then generally everything will be RCD protected. But on the basis that it's 63 amp and 411.3.3 puts that limit at 32 amp. We've got one more that was left in the hangover pot that I just want to do, and then what we'll do is just let me capture the screen so that we get any that we haven't had a chance to do tonight. Oh, the engineer has come back to say it's not TT, then in which case it based on that information it wouldn't require to be RCD protected because it's greater than 32 amp.
Doesn't mean RCD protection can't be applied.
No, it still provides enhanced protection. Okay, so our last one that we just wanted to get over, because what reminded me was the fact that it's RCD related. So what are the requirements now for testing RCDs, whether they're type A, F or B? Craig, what's our thoughts there?
Yep, so the requirement is that we only need to test at 1 times. And it only needs to be, it can be at 0 or 180 degrees, doesn't matter. The main reason is that we are now relying on the manufacturer's information, similar to as we do with MCBs, for Max ZS, etc. So we don't need to do the half times test, the 5 times test anymore, just the 1 times test on AC. Irrespective of the type of RCD. Sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah, no, that's all that 7671 requires, and what we've actually got is we've got a copy in all of the test and inspect regulations that tell us what we need with regard to RCD. They've all got that same note which we've stuck on the screen now, which says, that confirms exactly what Craig says regardless of the type. So we know that there are lots of people out there that have got functionality in the testers to enable you to do all sorts of things that might help you in things like fault finding, but they're not a requirement in terms of initial verification of an installation.
Sorry, I forgot to say, Sam, we do need to test the functionality of the button as well.
Yeah.
While we're doing it. Sorry.
Yeah, spot on. Okay, we've once again rattled through some questions, some great questions come in. There's some that I can see that we didn't get a chance to answer, so I've done my best to try and capture them, and we'll use those to start off with next time round. Just to finish off with, just want to say, if you're not actually NICEIC certified at the moment, but looking at becoming certified, then please do go onto the website to see what the different schemes, electrotechnical, MCS, hazardous, and competent person schemes that we do provide. And if you need any information, please do get in touch with us. Training wise also as well, we've got a number of training facilities, and so if you're looking for any electrical, renewable, emergency lighting, fire alarm, please do contact us, and we'll do what we can. Before we go, any last words from you guys, Craig and Keith? Thanks very much for your input tonight and keeping me straight as well.
You're more than welcome, Sam. Really enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for watching.
I'd like to say the same as well. Very interesting questions coming in from some of the people on the outside there, and it was very good. I thought when we all went silent looking for that reg, so it was really good. Well done, and thank you, Sam. Thank you, Craig, and thanks everybody out there.
That's brilliant, and yeah, some of the questions really good, got us thinking, and yeah, it's always amazing that. There's always a little bit of hesitancy of putting that first question in, but then once one's in, then people do plough in with good, and it's great. It's great, and yeah, got us thinking, made us learn stuff that we didn't know, and brush up on stuff that we should have done or did. So thank you very much for that. Please do join us again in July. We'll run another live Q&A. So please do, and apologies if we didn't get round to answering your question. We will use that. We'll bring that on to start the one next time round, and hope it's been useful. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you.